Welcome to the Troubled Artists Podcast, Episode 12, Clementine Moss.
Welcome back to the Troubled Artists Podcast. Today I am here with Clementine Moss. Clementine Moss is the founder and drummer of Zepparella, with a busy solo career as a singer and songwriter. Her book, From Bonham to Buddha and Back, The Slow Enlightenment of the Hard Rock Drummer, uses her music career as metaphor for contemplative practice. So thank you, Clementine, for being on the show. So before we begin, I do like to ask this question. Tell us in your own words, who is Clementine Moss?
Thank you. Thank you, Caesar. Thanks so much for having me. Let's see. Who is Clementine Moss? Well, depends on the moment, right? We all have so many different facets of ourselves. But let's see. I guess as an American, I have to start off with my career. So I am a musician and drummer, and the band that I kind of make my living from is called Zepparella. It's a Led Zeppelin band. And then I'm also a singer and songwriter, and I have several records out of me creating songs and putting those into the world. I'm also a writer, and I put out a book 2 years ago about my music career and also about my meditation and contemplative practice, which I've been involved in and thinking about and practicing for over 30 years. And that kind of brings in another part of my personality, which is that I am a spiritual counselor, a non-denominational spiritual counselor in a modality called Depth Hypnosis and in applied shamanism. And these are modalities that are used in settings to help people who have, say, PTSD, anxiety, depression, and or just people who want to open up their creative path, or all the gamut of reasons why people need help at different points in their life. So I do that as well as my music career, and that's kind of what my book is about: is how do those two aspects of somebody come together? The rock and roll lifestyle and the person who is the counselor in a contemplative way. So I think that is pretty much it. I live in California, and yeah, that's me in a little tiny nutshell.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's really cool. Just like how you have this cool balance of like rock and roll and spiritual guidance. That's really cool. I'm interested to get into that, but I want to just first start with the music aspect. Like, how did you get into that? Was that something that you found early on in life or later on in life? Just how did that come about?
Yeah, well, when I started off my life as Clementine in Southern California, and I was saw myself as a writer. I always thought I went to school for writing, and I always thought that was going to be kind of my path through life. I was passionate about writing, passionate about literature, um, and then I moved to New York City when I graduated from college, and thought, okay, I'm in the place where all of my favorite writers have spent some time, and this is now I'm going to be in the world, really, truly in the world, and writing stalled for me. I felt like I didn't know myself very well. Felt like I didn't have anything to write about. And I had a lot of musicians in my orbit. And just through a series of circumstances, when I was 27 years old, I took my first drum lesson. And I had a magical connection with the teacher. They were private lessons. And he taught me to play really quickly and pretty well. And I started joining bands, and music just took me over. I set writing aside while I just followed this big passion. And I was in bands that were touring a lot, and and just my life opened up that way. And then so that's kind of how it happened. It was really unexpected. It's very strange for me even now to say that I've spent this time as a musician, because it was never in the plan.
Yeah, no, I understand that. A lot of like artists in general, sometimes like a lot of unexpected things happen that could, transform them or make them see it as like a career, just like a little thing where, you don't think much of it, but then, you see something and it's like, wow, this is really, really fascinating. I want to learn more about this. And then from there, they just continue to learn more and they get better at their craft and they just continue to do it for like the rest of their lives. So it's really cool that
Yeah.
you found that and you're continuing to do that, which is really cool. I got a chance to listen to some of the music that you put out like on Spotify and it's really,
Hmm.
really good, you know.
Oh,
So,
thank you.
mm-hmm.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's a lot of artists become artists because they are internal looking people, right? They really want to figure themselves out. And in figuring themselves out, they do that through the creative process, right? And so I think that, that idea that things aren't in stone, that we can actually change our entire aspect, change our entire focus from here to there. I think it is the mark of someone who's kind of tapped into, that creative spirit. And I think that is a really helpful thing for people who are artists and who are not, to really be open to the possibilities, that and following your interest. Like, what am I really interested in now? And kind of saying, what the heck, I'm just going to do that for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. It does affect like not just artists, but everyone in general, you know. There's just something so fascinating about the arts and being creative, you know. Even if you don't do that for like as a full-time career or something, it's always best to just do it like as a hobby or something, just to have that creative side of you because, you know, a lot of crazy stuff can happen in the world, so it's always good to have like the creativity inside you to just have like a nice balance of everything. So that's wonderful to
Yeah,
hear.
you learn so much about yourself, right? Even, I've always had this thing. I think it's because I had so many activities when I was a kid, but I always feel like if I feel bored or stuck in my life, I just take a lesson in something, and for a while, I was taking a lesson in sewing, right? And I got really into sewing for a while, and it taught me so much about the way that I saw the world, the way that I moved through the world, what I was focusing on when I was looking, just a different way of seeing the world, just in learning how to sew. And it's not like I'm sewing clothes for myself these days, or it was kind of a short-lived passion for me, but I learned so much, and I think it's great um, to have that recognize that, wow, to learn something new about myself is just a class away. It's
Mhm.
something that I always wanted to do. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's always good to yeah, just try something new, you know, and it can be a little scary at first because you've never done that before, or it's like, what if this happens? What if that happens? You know, but sometimes you just gotta,
What if I'm bad at it?
yeah,
That's a
yeah,
big thing everybody says.
mm,
That's probably, I would like to take like a art class, like a drawing class or something, but in my head I'm like, but you're terrible at that, right? But I don't know, like going in and confronting that voice might be just the whole thing that I'm meant to do, right?
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I want to get into my next question about your music, which is how does contemplative practice inform your music?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's hard to really list all of the ways that that kind of practice, and I'm talking about, meditation or any kind of inward, where you sit for a while and sit, or maybe some people find this in walking or in activity as well. Athletes, I think, can find that place in the practicing of their craft as well, but any time where you really are letting go or allowing thoughts to move through you without reacting to them, without attaching any meaning to them, and just finding that simple, quiet, still place that's within each of us. And whatever it is that brings you to that realization, that place within us that's perfectly silent and unchanging, right? Whatever practice, and for me, meditation has been a great way for me to connect with that aspect of myself. Um, that influences every aspect of my life because I really do believe in that Buddhist idea that our reactions to what's happening to us our perspective of what's happening to us is really what causes our suffering, right? It's we can see things happening to us, or we can see things as just being presented for us to learn. That even that shift can make a huge difference in our happiness level and our feeling of our own empowerment, and our own ability to get through things. I think we all know people who have something terrible happen to them in their lives, and they are stuck there, and they can't, they've fallen into such a feeling of victimhood, and it's very difficult for them to get out of that. And that's really heartbreaking, right? To watch somebody, that's a long lesson, long, painful lesson, that I think each of us learns at some point. Um, but when it comes to music, what I realized at a certain point was that when I'm sitting behind the drum kit and I'm playing a show, and I hear those voices telling me that I'm going to mess something up, or that I'm not playing well, or that maybe the drums aren't correct, or the situation isn't correct. If I'm sitting there worried about how many people have come to the show, if all of those thoughts are going through and that's what I'm paying attention to, then I just don't play well, right? So the times when I play the best are when I'm able to let go of all of the stimulus around me, not react to it, and just fall into that same centered place, that same place that's ultimately silent and quiet, and allow myself to play what's necessary to play. It's almost as if I'm allowing the music to move through me. Like the music is playing me. When we're in meditation, we can practice that with the breath, almost allowing ourselves to be breathed by whatever force is around us, right? It's like this letting go of reactivity in order to bring yourself right into the moment. And I think that people who play sports find that place as well, where their mind goes silent, and they're just um, like time stands still when we're doing that. That can happen to people who are artists who completely lose track of time while they're doing it. It can happen to an accountant, who just is so focused on what it is that they're doing that time. They look up and the clock, it's like 2 hours have gone by, right? It's finding that place in the center of ourself where we're not letting the things around us agitate us, and we get reactive. So to me, all of those things come back to finding that stillness, that place within us. And in our world now, we're so, and I'm a great um, just as susceptible as anybody, is that I can have something play. I can be listening to something in my head of interest all day long. I can be listening to podcasts and audiobooks. I can be watching TikTok. I can be, there's a movie on, there's a show on, it's just like this constant barrage of noise, right, that we're listening to. And it's highly important to take that time to be in silence and just watch all of the chaos slowly calm down, as we just sit and allow everything um, to get slower and quieter. And then out of that place, eventually we do find that still place, that place that feels almost eternal, like it's always been there, the same within us. And I think that brings us into more peace and more ability to handle all of the stress that we're really under right now.
Yeah.
Kind of a long answer, sorry.
Oh, you're good. Um, but yeah, no, it's definitely something I think people need to be more aware of, just the taking in the silence and just letting, like not these like negative thoughts and crazy stuff that happens like take over our mindset. It's very important to just kind of step back, take a deep breath, tell yourself, everything's going to be okay, stay positive. My dad is actually the one who always tells me that, because If I'm ever stressed about something or I'm doing that, he's always there to give me that support, just stay positive, don't think negative, just continue to move forward, So I think it's very important because, maybe some people out there, they don't have that support, and it's just important to love yourself and to
Mm.
just continue to do what you love and just tell yourself that it's going to be okay. And obviously not every day is going to be perfect, or there's going to be a lot of crazy stuff that happens, but if whatever you need to do to find yourself, whether it is meditation or anything else, like another art form or something, or writing, or whatever it is, if that's what calms you down, then do that. You don't have to always be creative 24/7. If you need to take a mental health day off and to find yourself again, and then get back on and continue to do what you love, then take the time to heal yourself, and you'll
Mm.
continue to do great things. So
Yeah, that's really well said. Yeah, there's something, for a long time, I had really negative um, self-attack thoughts in my mind, all through my teens, 20s. I feel like that's kind of how I found meditation, was to figure out, like, what is that? Like, why do I have such like, if something's not going wrong, it was immediately turned back on myself, and I would like, these thoughts of self-attack would come in. The first thing that really started to shift that was that I realized that my thoughts were coming up, but that they were almost like physiological processes, right? So there are thoughts in our things in our body that move our blood around, start our heart um, every beat. And what if our thoughts were just a physiological process, that I didn't have to believe them, that I could watch them come into my head and not react to them and let them just pass through? That was the first thing that really allowed me to start getting distance. Like, maybe those thoughts aren't true. Maybe I not only don't have to listen to them, but maybe they're not even my thoughts. Maybe they're things that I've absorbed from the greater culture or from people in my life. Like, maybe that stuff isn't mine, right? And then that was the first thing. And then the second thing was, the more that I stepped, like, allowed that space between me and my thoughts, then I started to really find that center, that quiet center that really felt like I was okay. My thoughts are telling me I'm not okay, but there's a part of me that is kind of always okay. Even in the most dire things, even if I'm in a traffic accident, there's a part of me that's watching me go through the traffic accident, right? Like, it's there. And when looking back at that very stressful place, I can see how there was a part of me that walked outside and was able to, like, get from point A to point B and handled it. And so I think that self-love that you're talking about, I think once you find that part of you that's okay, you start realizing, like, that is love. Like, there is love in that place. It's like a easy, peaceful um, thing where there is no self-attack. It's just all love. And also, when I start hearing all of those things and realize how much pain I've been going through in this process, I realize, gosh, everyone might be going through this process. And then my love expands, and I become so compassionate and empathetic to everybody. I remember sitting in the car when I was doing all of this really intense looking at this stuff, and looking in the faces of people walking down the street, and just thinking, man, I don't even know what they could possibly, like, if this is so bad. I've had a very peaceful and easy life relative to so many other people. And if I have all of this junk in my head, how much other people might be struggling. And then my self-compassion becomes bigger compassion. And I really do think that that is the point of any contemplative or spiritual practice, is to open our compassion, open our empathy. And when we do that, then it comes back to us. We feel better about us, and then it radiates out. So yeah.
No, well said. I mean, that is something that people need to hear, you know. I mean, everybody is different and creative in their own ways. And a lot of people, you know, you may not know they may be going through something traumatic or something because, you know, you never know. But like we said, you know, it's always important to find like our center, like find what we love to get away from all the craziness that happens in life, you know. Yeah, it's very important to how you said, you know, just be open to other people's like thoughts and like hear what they have to say because sometimes people like don't talk about that negative stuff and they just kind of bury it deep down inside them and it help or it doesn't or it affects them, it affects their mindset. Having those
Hmm.
negative thoughts and not talking about them is not healthy. And
Hmm.
I feel like just talking, just hearing people's stories and hearing what they have to go through and talking about the positives and the negatives of their career is very important. You know, it's one of the main reasons why I started this podcast in the first place because I just wanted to hear people's stories and just hear what they go through, the, you know, not just the negatives but also the positives, just talking about like their highlights and the stuff that they do, you know, and it it helps them. It, you know, it's, I mean, it informs other people of who this person is and, you know, they want to check out their work and stuff. That's awesome. But at the same time, it's also a healing process for some people just to sit down and talk to another person, artist to artist, you know, just here's what I do, here's how my creativity shines, and just helping them, you know, through a difficult process that they may be going through. Or, you know, just
Hmm.
like I said, just to showcase their work and just continue to help build their careers by gaining an audience of people where it's like, oh, that person's a musician. Let me listen to their stuff. Or, oh, that person's a filmmaker. Let me see the films that they've been working on. So it's just like a great balance of just showcasing their work, but at the same time, helping them to heal deep down inside them. So,
That's a great gift that you're offering. Yeah, that's lovely.
I was curious because I saw that, you know, you're a drummer of your band. So how did you come about just going to the drums? Like, did you try out other instruments and the drums were just the easiest for you, or just like how did you find that instrument for your band?
Yeah, when I was a kid, I played piano for a number of years, had piano lessons, and then I was in the choir and played flute in the band and all of these things. But I kind of stopped playing music, around junior high school, right when I got real miserable, about being Clementine, and kind of didn't stop playing music. So, there was a number of years where I didn't think about that I would ever play music again. And then I kind of started singing a little bit. I had a boyfriend in New York who was a recording engineer and a musician. And so I started to really, music started to be kind of all around me. Our friends were musicians, and I was spending time in the recording studio watching how records were being made. And I kind of started, I would be in the studio with him, and he'd be working on songs, and I would be listening over and over, and words kind of started, I was a writer. So words would come to me, and I would kind of use the music as an impetus to write poetry. And then at a certain point I thought, well, maybe I'll make songs out of these, little songs out of these. And he kind of helped me, and I started singing a little bit. And at that time I was really insecure, and an insecure singer doesn't really work. It doesn't matter how your voice is, but you have to have some authority to really front a band, and I did not have that. So one day we were in the studio, and a drummer was going to show up, and he didn't come. So the drums were set up there, and I just thought, I never did this before. I was just goofing around, and I sat down at the drums, and my boyfriend at the time said, well, here, I'll show you a couple things. And I kind of, played a beat, whatever beat he showed me. He said, actually, you really picked that up fast. If you want, I can set up, a couple little pieces of a drum kit at the house because we had a bunch of gear there. So we set that up, and I just started to, when I got home from work, I would just sit down with the drums for a little bit and just play along to a couple of different songs. I was bartending at the time, and this person came in, and I was talking to him, and I said I was, kind of goofing around with the drums, and he said, well, here's the number of the best drum teacher in New York City. And I made an appointment. I went to that lesson, and that kind of sealed my fate. Like, okay, drums, I have something special with drums where they just make a lot of sense to me. And yeah, and it's a natural, it's kind of like my instrument, I kind of found my instrument. Yeah.
That's great. Like we talked about, like, before, just like how like the most unexpected moments can
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
affect us like the
I
rest of our
know.
lives. It's just like,
Yeah.
oh, I haven't tried this before. And then again, like getting that support from people just saying like, hey, you're really good. You should continue to do this. And, it's at first it's like, okay, sure. And then from there, it's like, oh, maybe there is something here. And then
Yeah.
continuing
Yeah.
to do that. And that's kind of how it was for me, because I'm into film, so
Uh-huh.
when I first started off, it was just like silly videos with like my brother and my cousins, and it was just goofy stuff, but we would show that to like my family and friends, and they would just be like, hey, this looks like a lot of fun. This is really cool. You should continue to do that. And just hearing that at such a young age, it's like, oh, okay, we'll just continue to do that. And then, just continuing
Yeah.
to do that. And then soon, I made like an actual like short film, a more dramatic one. And, I went through the whole process of like casting and writing a script and production design, all that stuff. And then by the end of the film, it just kind of opened my eyes, and it's like, maybe this is something I want to do the rest of my life. And from there, just I went to film
That's
school,
amazing.
and yeah, it was just like,
That's
it's
amazing.
really cool. And um yeah, it's just, and everyone kind of has like those experiences, and it's just really cool to hear that. And again, just continuing to have that support, whether it's from other people or just even yourself, just telling yourself that you can do this, or maybe there's something in it for me. And then just continuing to find that passion, that creativity inside you. So it's just really cool just to hopefully
Yeah,
just
that's
continue to do
wonderful.
that. So
Yeah, that's really wonderful. And I always admired people who really knew what they wanted to do when they were young, you know? But I think maybe most of us kind of do in some sense. And then we come up against, people who are not supportive. And I think that derails a lot of people. I've met a lot of people who said, I didn't start playing my instrument till I was in my 40s or 50s because, when I was a kid, I was told that it wasn't, worthwhile to do. But I always wanted to do it. And now I'm doing it. So, it's so important, I think, and we're so lucky when we grow up with people around us who are supportive of our
yeah,
passions. Yeah.
absolutely. So we're both very lucky to have that support, and um, hopefully just like giving other people that support that they didn't have when they were younger. It's just
Right.
important to have that overall, just have support. And maybe it doesn't have to do with just the arts, just life in general, because people
Mm.
go through
Hmm.
a lot of stuff that we're unaware of. And like I said, if they don't talk about it, or if they don't have that support system, it definitely affects them emotionally, mentally. And it's just, it's not good to have those negative thoughts and stuff just overbearing their lives. Find
Hmm.
that support system and that community of other artists or filmmakers, writers, painters, whoever it is, and just continue to do what you love. And if you're just starting off, obviously like the first thing you make, it's not going to be amazing or anything, but just having people support you, and then just like listening to like their feedback and just continuing to develop your craft is what makes it better. And
Hmm.
if you don't tell yourself, like if you make something and it's not good, it's like, oh, it's not good, I guess I just won't do this. But
Hmm.
sometimes you just, like I said, you don't, the first stuff you make isn't that great, but if you continue to build that craft and tell yourself it's going to be better, like the next project you do, or the next song, or the next one and the next one, just continuing to build on that, and then you'd be amazed, like, wow, I'm doing this now. And then looking back at the stuff you used to do, it's like there was definitely a great progression that happened. So it's just very important to overall
Mm.
just continue to develop your craft and find that support system. So that's just what it.
Yeah, and isn't it funny? Like I think about this a lot. Like, isn't it funny that vulnerability, you're talking about vulnerability, being vulnerable to ask for help, being vulnerable to find community, being vulnerable to say, I don't quite know how to do it, right? Being vulnerable enough to say, I'm going to do this no matter what, right? Vulnerability and then humility, going into it and saying, okay, this isn't quite right, and asking, what can I do to make it better? And listening and, being humble to be able to take that kind of feedback. Vulnerability and humility, they sound like they sound like weak skills, but actually those are the skills that make you the strongest, and I think that we think about just barreling through and having to believe in ourselves no matter what and not listening to anybody, and I'm going to do this all by myself. That is a very weak position to take, especially when you're an artist in a community oriented art like film, like music, where you must engage other people. The people who seem to get the farthest are the people who you could have a belief in your ability to get it right one day. You have a belief in your passion and your talent, but you also must be strong enough to open yourself vulnerably and open up to being humble in every situation, knowing there's always something for you to still learn, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. And as artists, we're constantly learning. It's never, not everything we make is perfect. I don't think people like that would ever reach that level of perfection. Even if you talk to like some of the greatest filmmakers or painters or whatever, like they don't say like, oh, what they make is perfect, like they're always looking to improve on their craft and continuing to make better things, and just continuing to do it, just not just to develop their craft, but also just continuing to do what they love. Because I feel like if people are really hard on themselves, like, I'm going to be like the greatest filmmaker, I'm going to do the greatest artwork, and then they do this and it's not good, and then they just kind of are like, oh man, this isn't good, maybe I should reconsider doing something, because
Hmm.
they put so much higher expectations on themselves that when it doesn't reach that level, they feel kind of down on themselves. And
Defeated, yeah,
uh,
like they need to stop or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's all.
Rather than seeing that that's the process, right? That is the process. Like you're constantly failing. Like every time I do a drum solo, it is a failure in my eyes. Like it is not what I imagine in my head, and yet I just have to keep doing it, keep um, like being humble, keep throwing everything I have at it, keep humiliating myself on a stage in my eyes because it's not what I want to do, what I want. But that's part of the process of getting to the point of being able to be okay with, with where I am. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
always important to always just have manageable goals, in life, even if it's something small, just like getting out of bed in the morning, or just like writing like a sentence, or just writing something, like even if it's so small, but you say that, oh, I did it, you accomplished what you were supposed to do. It just helps you uh your positive mindset, and just continuing to do that, and like I said, it could be something small, like writing just like a little snippet of something, or uh just doing just like a little activity, exercising, or just something like that. There's something about doing a manageable task that can affect someone in a more positive mindset, because sometimes we're overstretching to do like these big and great things, and maybe they'll get to that eventually, but it's not going to happen overnight,
A lot of stuff happens in increments, doesn't it?
Exactly.
They
Yeah.
say like if you play an instrument 15 minutes a day, like at the end of the month, you will have played several hours on that instrument, which is a lot farther when you keep putting it off for a week. Like, oh, I got to sit down, but I don't have 2 hours to sit. And well, actually, if you just did that over a little bit every single day, it adds up. And progress is incremental. Learning is incremental. We can't just, we can't know everything in a day, right?
Exactly.
It's just, we have to just keep at it. And I think that is a great benefit of learning an instrument when you're young, or learning how to do any art when you're young, is to really see, oh, things do take time. There is an instant gratification in this. And yet when I do accomplish stuff, it's so gratifying because it took time. Yeah, and I showed up for it. I showed up for myself, and I showed up for the project. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, it all just comes down to just like your mindset, like if you really love to do something, just do it, even if there's a lot of obstacles in your way, or if there's, if you're even telling yourself like, oh, I don't know if I could do this, just don't listen to those negative thoughts, just jump in, do that. And like I said, the first thing you make, it's not going to be good. It's probably going to be bad, but, there's always just learning to it, and, if you had a fun time making that, then you'll continue to do that, and then you'll want to develop that. And like I said, just taking it step by step, day by day, and just continuing just to build your craft and continuing to follow your passion. That's really what it all comes down to, and if you have the time to do that, do it, and people who really love it, they'll find the time, other people, it's like, oh, I don't have time for this, I'll do something, but, if you really, really love something, you will find the time to do it. And again, not overbear yourself with like all these really like higher goals, and stuff like that, and like I said, like maybe it'll come eventually, but at the same time, it's just finding a nice little rhythm and continuing to do that, and then just finding happiness in like the little things, so little accomplishments, can really affect someone in a more positive mindset.
Right.
So I know we've talked about this a little bit, but just I wanted to hear about like how you manage self-judgment in high pressure performances. So I was curious to know how you handle that.
Well, I'm very good now. I've been meditating for over 30 years, and I'm very good at being able to see, kind of see the big picture of things. And I don't get to, honestly, the times I get the most agitated in my life are when I'm running late, when flights don't happen correctly, when we're running late to the show, when um, time is really, that's my stress. And that's my big test, right? Is when I'm really just like, driving like in bat out of hell down the highway to get to the show, or, just so stressed out about the flights. It's where I again sink into that center of myself and just realize what is going to happen is going to happen. And there's only so much that I can do to worrying most of the time is not going to help it. They say in the life of a musician, it's not when, like, what if things are going to go wrong. It's just kind of like when things go wrong. You have to change your idea. Like things are going to go wrong, especially when you're dealing with, people getting to a venue across the country, and, we're dealing with airlines and all kinds of goofy stuff. So to me, those are the really stressful parts. Being on stage I've never really had stage fright as a drummer. Drums feel very comfortable to me. Like I feel like I'm in the place I'm supposed to be, so I don't get too stressed out about being on stage, but getting to the show is where a lot of my meditation practice comes in. It comes in handy.
Yeah, I understand. There's never enough time in the day, making something. We wish like, oh, can't there be more time to do this? Or like if we're doing something so good, and like you said, like so many hours have already passed, like, oh, so it's like,
Yeah, I
why does
know.
time fly like so quickly nowadays,
Yeah, I know.
it's
I
just crazy,
know.
but
I know.
it's always important, time management, like is just, if you're constantly running late, make yourself time to start waking up earlier, just making sure that you're not constantly running late all the time, or just continuing to like just be organized, and you're not constantly just like trying to put something together last minute, like it's always important just to like have a nice schedule of stuff of what you're going to do, and it takes adjustments to it. And like I said, if we're artists and if we love something, we'll find the time to do that. But if other people, it's like, I don't have time for this, I don't want to do, so it's just like not good to have like that mindset like we talked about. But just finding organization and finding that time management, because like we said, time kind of just flies by. But just having that skill is important. That's sort of what I'm trying to say.
Well, it
Yeah.
certainly clears your life out from stress, from a lot of stress, at least for me. I mean, I'm somebody who, I cannot be late. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, I don't know if it's the drummer in me. I don't know if it was my upbringing, but, it's impossible. Like sometimes I'll be going to a party and I'll be like, okay, don't get there on time. Don't get there on time. Don't get there on time. And I'll try my best. I'll do everything I can and I'll get there like 5 minutes before, like no matter what happens, like I just cannot, it's impossible for me. Um, so that is, that is very helpful in my life. I think that my big problem in my life is that I can fill my life up with things, with a lot of things that I don't really need to be doing, right? I think that's true for all of us. Like, I don't need to be necessarily watching that TV show or being on social media for this long or spending my time, in, ways. I mean, everybody does need downtime. I'm not saying that, I think it's really important sometimes for me to say, today I'm doing nothing. Like I really am doing nothing. I'm reading magazines. I'm, looking at the ceiling. I'm watching a movie. Like, I think that's really important. But in my daily life, as I'm going along, I watch the ways that I try to kind of distract myself or fill my life up from doing the stuff that maybe I'm putting off a little bit, and that's where that's what I'm always checking myself to do. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I get that. It's very easy to be distracted nowadays because of our
Mm-hmm.
phones, and social
Mm-hmm.
media and all that stuff. And that's like a whole nother conversation about like the stuff that we see on social media. If we're seeing someone like, like having like this great success and all that stuff, and you kind of tell yourself like, oh man, like that person's having all that success and I'm just kind of here like not at that level. What do I, and it
Oh, you can never really get into that part of
yeah.
how, that's just feeding that negative voice within us, right? I mean, yeah, there's no sense in comparing yourself because, I remember early on being, having those feelings like, oh, wow, that person is just so much better than me or so much whatever than me. And then actually meeting that person and realizing like they're really a mess, like they're really struggling. And, and they might be better at whatever it was that I was hoping to be better at than I am, but my life is a lot more peaceful than what's going on over here. So I think in reality, it really is not helpful in any way to compare yourself to other people. I think that's just it's just feeding your own insecurities,
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. So yeah,
yeah,
don't listen to those like those negative
yeah.
thoughts, and like those, don't compare yourself to people that are at that level, or
You really can't. Yeah, you really
it's
can't.
just,
Yeah, you can take it as inspiration.
yeah, yeah, exactly, and
Hmm.
we all have inspirations of other like artists that we look at, and wanting to like try to like maybe not recreate it, but like take like little things of that and then kind of just
Hmm.
making
Hmm.
something of our own, so it's always just important to have like we said, like goals, and like looking at like inspiration and like time management and support. These are all very important things, and like we said, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take time, but if we just continue it to go day by day, you'd be amazed like how far we've gone from where we first started to where we are, like just like a week later, 2 weeks later, and it's like, oh wow, like so much progress has been made because I was able to adjust my like schedule, like I was getting up earlier to go to my venues. I was completing like all these goals of like just writing like stuff down, and it's just important just to have like all of these skills and like I said, overall just continuing to do what you love. So it's very
That's
important.
right. That's
Um,
right.
I do want to start to wrap up. So, is there any other like last minute advice that you want to give to any up and coming artists or musicians that are listening to this podcast?
Sure. I mean, you offered so many today, Caesar, that were really, really helpful, I think, for people. I think that um, I think when you're working on a creative project, I think showing up for that project every day. When I was I for a number of years ago, I had a day job where I worked a 9 to 5 job, and I was, touring and doing all of that stuff. They were very lenient with me being able to go away when I needed to go away, but during the week I would be there 9 to 5, and I, was a songwriter and a musician and a singer. And so every day after work at 5, I would go home and then I would drive down to my studio, which is a half hour away. And I would be there and then work there and come home. And I would do that every day. And some days I would get to the studio after work and I'd just be tired and I would just be kind of uninspired. And so I would sit down and I would do some of the dumb stuff, like organizing my files, or maybe I would just kind of open up a program and just like create a simple drum beat. Like that's what I had, an electronic drum beat, so that when I came in and I thought, oh, I have some words, let me listen. Maybe there's a drum beat that would help me kind of develop the words. Just little things that weren't like, okay, I'm in there and I'm communing with the gods of creativity and all of this amazing stuff is flowing out. It was more really like, let me do stuff in here so that next time I sit down and I have more energy, things are set up so that I can fall right into it, right? And so the way that I saw it was really like I was showing up for the work. And some days I really didn't feel like I had it in me to do that, but I made it a priority that I would show up for it. And um, I feel that way with drumming. Like, some days I don't feel like sitting down at the drums and practicing, but maybe I spend some time, listening to a drum beat or watching a YouTube video about some, thing that I'm trying to work out, or maybe I'll do some other aspect of it, but I want to show up for it. And I think that when we look at it that way, then it kind of means that we're in service of the art. And it's another job. And even though maybe we'll never be paid for it, maybe it will always be a labor of love, but it's my job to show up for this to happen. And I think when we approach it that way, it means that it takes it out of ourself and we just become the vehicle through which the art is coming. And I think that really can what will happen eventually is you'll have those big inspired moments where all of the ideas kind of coalesce and things come out, and you're in that free creative flow that we all wish it could be like every time. But there's a lot of little grunt work that has to happen that way. As a writer, they say there's a book called The Artist's Way, which is very helpful for opening up creative blocks. And the author said, every morning just freehand write 3 pages of just junk, like whatever it is, just whatever is coming out of your brain, just write it. And she likened it to turning on a tap, like a water tap. And the first water that pours out might be rusty, might be old, might be dirty. But eventually, if you do it every day, the tap starts to flow and starts to kind of pour out. And if you get those 3 pages out in the morning, for the rest of the day, the tap flows more easily. So that again is showing up every day for the work, even if it's that you're doing the very uninspired part of it. You're priming the pump. You're opening yourself up so that when you do have that moment of energy, where you really feel like your ideas are clicking and everything's going, then things move quickly and you've set yourself up for success. So I guess that's maybe the creative advice I would give to people.
That's wonderful. Yeah, just show up, just do
Mm-hmm.
it. It's just
Mm-hmm.
one of those things where it's like, it's going to be scary at first, there's going to be a lot of like negative stuff about it. It's not a clear road. There's a lot of bumps along the path, but show up. Just do it, just continuing to do what you love, and like we said, finding the right community, getting that time management, continuing to develop your craft. Don't compare yourselves to other people that are having this way better success than you are at the moment. It's just very important to go at your own pace, go with the flow, and just continue to be the great artist that you are. And eventually you'll reach that success. And even if you don't have that level or not getting paid or stuff like that, if you love doing it, you'll it's just so important to just do what you love, and it's
Then you really do learn so much about yourself, which will translates into every area of your life. And I mean, what are we really doing here? Like, we're all kind of going to the same end, right? Like, we're all going towards one day where we won't be here anymore. And to me, the point of it is to be able to know myself by the end. And that's, I think, the benefit of tapping into that creativity. That's our life force, and we start to understand who we are as we go along. Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in to the Troubled Artists podcast. Have a great day.